Alrighty, welcome back. We are now moving on to step 3 of the class, and that is about focus. So we've talked about step 1, which is understanding, and step 2, which is remembering, but permeating both of those steps is this idea of focus. We need to actually sit down and do the work in the first place. Then when we're sitting down to doing the work in the first place, we need to not get distracted while we're doing the work. And sort of related to that, we need to be able to take breaks appropriately, and we need to not burn ourselves out studying, because that would just be bad for our physical health and our mental health, and it would also be quite bad for our exam results. So those are the sorts of topics that we're going to be talking about in this focus section. And in this video, I want to share my tactic for dealing with motivation issues. And part of that is the phrase that motivation is a myth. Now, I've talked about this a few times in a couple of different videos and like podcasts and stuff, but I haven't really fully explained it. And the reason motivation is a myth is because motivation, like, what is motivation? We only need motivation to do the things that we don't want to do. And usually those are things that require a short-term pain in order to get long-term gain. Like, we never say, I need motivation to sit down and watch Netflix, or I need motivation to hang out with my friends. We say, I need motivation to work, and I need motivation to go to the gym. Because we know that those are not very pleasant in the short term, but actually lead to good results in the long term. And the way our human psychology works is that we tend to very much overweight short-term benefits rather than long-term benefits. Because especially if it's like, oh, I need to do well in my exam so that I can get a job in 10 years' time. That's far too long-term to actually be a reliable method of motivating us in the present. So why is motivation a myth? Well, I think the gold standard approach is to just scrub the word motivation from our vocabulary and replace the concept of motivation with the concept of discipline. So there's an article on a website called Wiz Domination, which I'll link in the show note bit of this class, which basically says that screw motivation, what you need is discipline. And they argue that, there's the thought of, I should do this thing, and then there's the action of doing the thing itself. And motivation kind of lies in the middle. It's like, we have the thought, I should do this thing. Motivation is when we say, I need to feel like doing this thing, and the action is then just doing the thing itself. So what this article argues, and what I completely agree with, is that there is absolutely no need for us to feel like doing something before we do the thing. Like, this morning, filming this class. I didn't feel like filming this class, but I did it anyway, because I recognize that the way I feel is completely inconsequential to whether I do the thing or not at all. And there's a few other bits in the article that are quite nice. It says that, I think at one point in the article, they say that a 3-year-old bases its decisions on what it feels like. An adult bases its decisions on what it knows it needs to be doing. And so today, when filming this class, I was trying to be an adult by, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it, as opposed to, I need to get myself to feel like doing it first. So the idea of motivation is this sort of infantile fantasy that we need to feel like doing something before we actually do it. And in fact, we can just operate discipline and just do the thing anyway. That's kind of the gold standard. Realistically, I have motivation problems the same as anyone else, especially when it comes to going to the gym. I actually don't mind sitting down and filming this class because it's quite fun. I don't mind studying because it's quite fun. But I really don't enjoy going to the gym, and therefore I need to motivate myself to go to the gym. I recognize that yes, in an ideal world, the word motivation wouldn't even be in my vocabulary. In an ideal world, I would, as Nike would say, just do it. I would just go to the gym, but it's kind of hard. So I personally, I've got a few different ways that I use to help me sort of pluck up the motivation to, overcome that activation energy to actually sit down and do the work in the first place. So I'll break down how I think about this, and then hopefully you can kind of take the concept, if you like, and you can apply it to your own life. But essentially, when do we need motivation for stuff? We need motivation for stuff where the short-term, it's not very pleasant. And usually where the consequences for not doing the thing are not very great. So for example, if I told you, I would give you £1 million to sit down and do your homework, you would jolly well sit down and do your homework. Like, it's not hard. If I told you that if you don't do your homework, you're going to die, you would jolly well sit down and do your homework. But usually we don't operate within those extremes of motivation, because there's no need for motivation there, because in one circumstance, the outcome is so pleasurable in the here and now that we're going to do the work. And in the other one, the punishment for not doing the thing is so great that we're going to do the thing. And those are the two elements of it. So it's like, how pleasurable is this thing to do versus how punishing is the alternative of not doing it. And those are the domains that I think we can target when it comes to motivation. So the way that this works for me is that when I sit down to study, I want it to be a pleasant process. And so often I'll go to a nice library or a hipster coffee shop, or sit on my desk and make sure my desk is clean so it's a nice process. I'll make myself a cup of coffee, or I'll buy a cheeky latte, and I'll have my kind of Spotify Study With Me playlist playing through my headphones, so that overall it makes the process of studying more pleasant or less unpleasant. With enough of these techniques, for me personally, and because I enjoy my subject and I treat it kind of like a game, that's another useful tactic, to treat studying as a game, because then it makes it more fun. Like, I enjoy studying enough to the point that I don't really need to motivate myself to study anymore, because it's just kind of fun to do. Equally, the other way of addressing this quandary is by targeting the punishment aspect of it. So there's a few of these websites where, let's say you make a commitment that you're going to lose 10 kilograms in the next 6 months. Then 6 months later, if you haven't lost the 10 kilograms, it will debit, let's say, £1,000 from your account and donate it to charity. Even donate it to the KKK or, whatever you want. The idea is that the punishment for not doing the task is so great that it's going to make us want to do the task in the first place. The other technique that some people find helpful for this is, let's say I was genuinely serious about wanting to go to the gym every day. I would give £1,000 to my housemate Molly and say, Molly, this £1,000 is yours, keep it safe. If there is ever a single day where I don't go to the gym without a very, very, very good excuse, then you can do whatever you want with that £1,000. It is now yours. So now I've sort of hacked my motivation equation, because now there is a big punishment for me to not go to the gym. Therefore, I'm more likely to go to the gym. And so those are just some of the ways that we can target this motivation thing. I think step one is to recognize that, just the idea of motivation is an infantile fantasy, that, I have to feel like doing work before I sit down and do work. Sometimes I don't feel like going to work in the morning. I still go to work in the morning. It's not an option. But for some reason, we don't treat our sort of study lives or our hobbies or our physical health or our mental health even with the same level of professionalism that we treat our work. Like, it wouldn't be an option for me to not go to work because I don't want to get fired, I don't want to let the team down, etc., etc. But I'm quite happy to not go to the gym because, it's only my body that I'm screwing up, or I'm quite happy to get a takeaway, like I ordered pizza today rather than cook something healthy, because it's only my body, and I don't know why that is. But anyway, kind of the top line gold standard is that motivation is a myth, and that we should scrub the word motivation from our vocabulary. But, we can recognize that that is an ideal that most of us don't attain, including me. And so we can then try and make the thing more pleasurable, or try and make the alternative more unpleasant. So when it comes to studying, what I would do is go to different coffee shops and set a budget of like £20 for the day. Or I'd be like, I'm allowed to buy whatever I want from this coffee shop up to £20. And that's like 6 lattes worth. And so overall of that, just like experience makes studying much more pleasant. Equally, I quite enjoy going to the library or studying with friends, because again, it just makes the act of doing it more pleasurable, and that means I'm more likely to do it. So those are just some thoughts on motivation. There is a good book called The Motivation Myth, which you can read if you like. That talks about this in a bit more detail, and I'll link to this Wiz Domination article. Like, that sort of changed the game for me when it came to thinking about motivation as being a myth and discipline as being the thing to go with. But I'll link that in the show notes or wherever it ends up being. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.